once a month from now onwards, and you'll get more information as to the dates in the newsletter. This is where we'll be holding play readings, sketches, musical evenings, etc. Our general club nights. So please come along, and if you enjoy it tonight, there's no entry fee, but there is a hat. Which will be as you go out if you've enjoyed the evening's entertainment. So you can put a penny in the old man's hat, as the song goes, or more. Anyway, tonight we're going to be entertaining you with sketches, poems, prosas, and song. And lots of song. We're going to go down memory lane for some of you, and there's something new for all of us. Wow. Firstly, though, I'd like to thank Lee Madiford. Lee's kindly offered to play the piano for us tonight. And he was our resident pianist for many years when we did our music halls. From, I don't know what date, John?
85.
Thank you. 1985 until
93.
1993. And it's lovely, really lovely to have Lee back again with us tonight. So, our opening, just one more thing. The bar is open during the evening, but there will be an interval of about 10 minutes in about 1 hour's time, or 50 minutes time. Okay, so, right, next. Our opening number is a song called My Eyes. And it's Dr. Horrible's sing-along blog, first published on the internet in 2008. And to hear more about this, there's Chris and Jenny.
Any doll with half a brain can see that humankind has gone insane, to the point where I don't know if I'll upset the status quo if I throw poison in the water main. Listen close to everybody's heart and hear that breaking sound. Hopes and dreams are shattering apart and crashing to the ground. I cannot believe my eyes when the world's filled with filth and lies, and it's plain to see all inside of me is on the rise.
extra news from the BBC North Home Service. Perhaps I should read that again. Hey, oh, here's news from BBC North Home Service, like. I can see we've got some foreigners in the audience, don't I? First of all, foreign news of theatrical notion, that is. The very erudite, talented, long-serving and even sexy Corners theatre group in Lausanne, the English-speaking group, the Village Players, have recently moved home from their 20-year-old premises at Chalet-Gobet to near the centre of Lausanne, at the Centre Puri-Lavauci. Anyway, as I speak at this very moment, the chairman of the Village Players, I can't remember his name, funny little fellow with a strange accent and a fuzzy beard, he's welcoming people to this opening ceremony at the place in Auchi, and I'd like to thank you all for coming. Thank you. And now the serious bit, the problems with the National Health Service in the United Kingdom. David Cameron's government, coalition government, has decided to introduce new health proposals in order to streamline the health service. And the various associations and health clinics have been asked for their opinion thereon. Well, here they are. The allergists voted to scratch it. But the dermatologists advised not to make any rash moves. The gastroenterologists had a sort of gut feeling about it. The neurologists thought the administration had a lot of nerve. It gets worse. The obstetricians felt that they were all labouring under a misconception. Ophthalmologists considered the idea short-sighted. Pathologists yelled, "Over my dead body," while the paediatrician said, "Oh, grow up." The psychiatrists thought the whole idea was madness. Oh well. Whilst the radiologists could see right through it. Surgeons decided to wash their hands of the whole thing, and the ear, nose and throat specialists wouldn't hear of it. The internists thought it was a bitter pill to swallow, and the plastic surgeons said, "This puts a whole new face on the matter." The podiatrists thought it was a step forward, but the urologists were pissed off at the whole idea. The anaesthetists thought the whole idea was a gas, and the cardiologists didn't have the heart to say no. But in the end, the proctologist won out, leaving the entire decision up to the arseholes at Westminster. Thank you.
Yes, Mike Scott with Stand Up. Stand Up? Mike Scott.
Just before I start to saying a few things which are rather silly, I'd just like to be serious for a moment. And what I'm doing is asking your help for a project for next year, an event next year, which is going to be in September with a bit of luck. It's going to be called Getting There. So I'm looking for those who are interested in participating. If you'd like to write something, read something, sing something, type something, because I'm very weak at that. Perhaps you could see me in the interval. The thing to do is to have the words "getting there" in your head, do a private brainstorming, and then we can perhaps get together and put some ideas for another evening like this. Right.
Stand up!
No, you don't have to. You don't have to. It's me. I've always wanted to be a stand-up comedian. Of course, when I'm standing up, I'm lying. But as far as I understand it, to be a stand-up comedian, you have to keep moving all the time. You've got to wiggle your hands around, skip about, pretend that you're a cup of tea or something like that, and you've got to pull funny faces. Look happy, point at people who you don't know, pretend you, and you keep moving all the time. keep moving all the time, keep moving. And you've got to tell jokes about mother-in-laws and things like that. And you've also got to, talk about, make jokes about bums and bottoms. But my problem is, I don't tell jokes about bums and bottoms. I sit on mine. Page 1. My Aunt Mabel was a cataholic. She had 9 cats on the farm and a terrible pond in her living room. Are there any Catholics here? Are there any Catholics here? Well, please forgive me. Please forgive me. It was Dario Fo, the Italian playwright, who wrote about John Paul I, Pope John Paul I, who only reigned for 33 days. And that was a real pity, because he was endowed with humour and a clear thinking. He once said, apparently with a slightly ironic smile on his face, that God was also a mother. You might like to think about that. Now we have an Argentinian pope, and he's apparently nearer to people. Increasingly people flock to Rome. First of all, there were, I think when he first sat on the throne, about 40,000 people used to come standing in front of the balcony at St. Peter's. And then at Easter this year, there were about 200,000 people filling the square at St. Peter's, before St. Peter's, and filling in all the side streets. 200,000 people. And now he's just been to Brazil, and there were millions who came to see him. And His Holiness, he spreads out his arms towards the expectant, jostling throng. And what does he say? Say no to birth control. Page 2. Are there any royalists here? Well, I know there are. Well, I'm one as well, but why does Prince Philip always look like the man who's come to call to see about the smell on the 3rd floor? Did you read about the royal baby? I thought the best article really was in Private Eye. The front page, it just said, "Woman has baby." I was very, very sorry to hear about David Frost dying, because he too was a pastor's son and was born in 1939. He had a knighthood and was on Queen Elizabeth. Think about it. Prince Charles' library was completely destroyed when Windsor Castle got burnt up, and he was deeply afflicted by the loss of 2 books, especially as he hadn't finished colouring in. When dear Lady Diana ascended to heaven, she was met by a crowd of excited, jostling, smiling angels, and they were all wielding cameras. "Here she comes! Here she comes!" St. Pierre was working for Rupert Murdoch. Are there any heads of state here? Politicians, past or present? Please forgive me. Now, when they were filming Bill Clinton recently, in the recent press conference, all they photographed was his fly buttons, which I thought was a bit old. Berlusconi, he's still around. He's just had a neurosurgical operation. It was a very messy business, and they opened up his head, and lots of young naked girls. Bacca El-Assed went to Geneva last week to see a psychiatrist. He was doing a bit of soul searching. I wonder whether I'm not having a small repression, he said. Last August, a Japanese came here, and when he got back, his friends asked, "Lausanne, was it good?" And he said, "Oh, I'm not sure. I haven't seen the photographs yet." Barbara, you think I'm a good husband? I mean, I'm sure you do. I mean, I take my wife every morning, every single morning, I take my wife coffee in bed. All she's got to do is grind it. Page 3. I asked my hairdresser, why does your dog look at me with such imploring eyes? Perhaps I should tell you, sir, that sometimes an ear falls off, and he loves that. A Scotsman was dying, and his best friend rushed to his bedside. Alistair, will you do me a favour? When I'm buried, will you pour a vintage single malt whisky over my tomb? Of course, I'll do that. Do you mind if I filter it through my kidneys first? I don't know if you've been to a cemetery recently, but you might see some tombs without any names on. They've just got numbers. It's the coded account numbers of bank presidents. Perhaps I should stand up to be a stand-up. My mother-in-law, she hates baths because they make her feel seasick. The last time I saw my mother-in-law, it was many, many years ago. She was on the ground, and there were 5 men hitting her with broken bottles and kicking her with their boots and making an awful noise. So, naturally, I strolled over and said, may I be of any assistance? And they said, No, we can manage, thank you, we can manage. I think I'm getting a bit murky, so I think I better stop. We'll meet again, don't know when, don't know when. Thank you, next number.
The next number we have a poem by Cecil Day with
Lewis.
Sorry.
Cecil Day Lewis.
Cecil Day-Lewis, I'm sorry. Cecil Day-Lewis with a brief bio from Jacqueline. Thank you.
Bit of erudition now for you here. So Cecil Day-Lewis, as I'm sure you know, was a poet laureate. He was born in Ireland in 1904. His father was a Church of Ireland clergyman and his mother was a nurse. 2 years later they moved to England, to Malvern, and then to Ealing. And there was a connection later on with a future father-in-law, with Ealing Studios, that some of you may have heard of. Sadly, in 1908, when he was only 4 years old, his mother died, and his father attempted to be both mother and father to him, what Cecil later referred to as smother love. He went to boarding school, to Sherborne School in Dorset, and then on to Oxford, where he became an acolyte of W.H. Auden and was part of the 30s Poets, became a left-leaning communist. But by the end of the 30s, he was fairly disillusioned with communism when it became more clear what Stalin was up to. And as he put it, he noiselessly slipped the painter. He taught in a private school and he married the daughter of one of the schoolmasters and had 2 sons, and the poem that I'm going to read was dedicated to his first son, Sean. But his private life was always complicated. He fell in love with Rosamund Learman, who was a novelist. He fell in love with her in 1941. And after that, he divided his time between his wife and sons in Dorset and his lover and mistress in London, until he fell in love in 1950 with an actress, Jill Belkin, whose father was Michael Balcon, who was the director of Ealing Studios, which turned out all those great comedies that you may be familiar with, Kind Hearts and Coronets, Passport to Pimlico. Anyway, Michael Balcon was displeased with the marriage, which led for his daughter Jill being permanently estranged from her father. But Daniel had two children with her, one of whom is the actor Daniel Day-Lewis. In 1968, he became a modernising poet laureate until his death 4 years later in 1972 at the relatively early age of 68. When, aptly for a future VP production, John Betjeman took over the post of Poet Laureate. And Betjeman summed up Cecil Day-Lewis's work. He stated, "I am absolutely sure Cecil's poetry is underrated. He persists in the mind. I only rattle in the ears." So, well, this poem has certainly persisted in my mind, and you have to know if it persists in yours. Walking away. It is 18 years ago, almost to the day, a sunny day, with leaves just turning, the touchlines new ruled, since I watched you play your first game of football. Then, like a satellite wrenched from its orbit, go drifting away behind a scatter of boys. I can see you walking away from me towards the school, with the pathos of a half-fledged thing set free into a wilderness. The gait of one who finds no path where the path should be. That hesitant figure eddying away, like a winged seed loosened from its parent stem, has something I never quite grasped to convey about nature's give and take. The small, the scorching ordeals which fire one's irresolute clay. I have had worse partings, but none that so gnaws at my mind still. Perhaps it is roughly saying what God alone could perfectly show, how selfhood begins with a walking away, and love is proved in the letting go. Thank you.